See, folks are still joining the room. Thank you all so much for being here this morning with me. I am Augustina Bertone. I am the Associate Director of the Department of Mental Health and UCLA Early Childhood Fellowship. And I am excited to be sharing this presentation with you today titled Harnessing the Power of Early Childhood Professionals Across Disciplines, a professional development program for individuals supporting young children. I see we're a good sized group today, and I want to invite you to throughout the next hour, feel free to drop questions in the chat or any comments or thoughts. I'll try to pause throughout and would love to hear your voices if you'd like to share any questions or thoughts related to what I'll be covering. And I'm presenting on behalf of my team today, and I'm really excited to share more with you about our program. All right, so I am excited to spend the next hour with you all, and more importantly, I'm eager to share some takeaways that we believe are applicable for supporting early childhood professionals and paraprofessionals across sectors, disciplines, and organizations. With our time today, I'm going to provide a brief overview of our program so you have some context from where we've gathered all of these learnings I will share. I'm going to go ahead and share 4 themes from our work supporting early childhood professionals and paraprofessionals, alongside some strategies that you can consider implementing yourselves, or perhaps you're already implementing, and this is just a reminder that these are great things to be thinking about when supporting early childhood professionals. For the sake of simplicity, I will say early childhood professionals, but that does also include paraprofessionals as well. And lastly, I'm going to close today by sharing a little bit about the importance of continuous quality improvement for our program and in thinking about early childhood work. And then hopefully, if time allows, we'll take questions at the end. But again, I want to invite you all to place questions in the chat as we go through the content. All right. So to share a little bit of context and to share a little bit about our program, the fellowship was born out of a collaboration between the Department of Mental Health of LA County and UCLA back in 2018, 2019. And our program is designed for professionals and paraprofessionals who directly or indirectly serve young children. And when we say young children, we think birth to age 6, but sometimes that give or take, some folks work with children up to age 8, for example. And they serve young children and their families. And typically the families that they're serving are families across different areas and different communities, very diverse communities, both in terms of socioeconomic status, race, ethnicity, and oftentimes some of our most disenfranchised and under-resourced communities. Our program is a 10-month professional development program starting in September of every year and ending in June. And it is a virtual program, so we meet on Zoom, and we meet one Friday and one Saturday back-to-back each month. So for example, we would meet this upcoming Friday and then the following Saturday. And we gather together for a series of experiential activities and presenters, and I'll share a little bit more about that as well. And the goal of our program is to support the professional development and well-being of early childhood professionals. And when we say early childhood professionals, this encompasses anybody who interfaces with young children, both directly and indirectly. So it could be in direct service, and such as psychologists, social workers, home visitors, nurses. We've had pediatricians, psychiatrists, attorneys, folks that work in advocacy, so perhaps not directly with families, but a little bit more removed, still on the grounds, doing work that directly impacts families with young children. We've had folks from the Department of Children and Families, teachers, special education teachers, preschool and daycare providers. So you name it, likely they have, we've likely had a fellow who fits that, that discipline, OTs, PTs, speech and language therapists. So I guess all of that to say that we're a very diverse group as it pertains to folks' professional backgrounds. And we really, really value the multidisciplinary aspect of this part of our program. And since the program's inception in 2019, we've had over 170 fellows complete the program. And in June, we will have had over 200 when our next cohort graduates. So we see our program as one example of how we can support the development of early childhood professionals in a range of disciplines and sectors. However, the themes that I'll share today with you and the strategies we encourage you to consider implementing would help anyone support early childhood professionals in different organizations. So you might be wondering what happens during the time our fellows meet for 2 full days each month. Our program provides a combination of presentations by national and local experts, community and academic experts, and experiential activities to bring everyone together to learn from our experts and as well from each other. And the fellowship is intentionally designed to build continuity across all of the sessions. So we hope that the content that we cover in September, our fellows will reflect on it, apply it to their work, and then come back and be ready to share what worked, what didn't work, what barriers and challenges do you notice, how does this fit with the communities you serve, and how does it not fit? How is it incongruent? So it is an iterative learning process, and I'll cover that a little bit more in our first theme. But folks engage in these presentations where they're able to actively interact with our presenters. They also participate in 90 minutes of reflective practice every session throughout the year. And this is done in small groups of the same fellows each month. So they stay with the same group, and they're led by an endorsed reflective practice facilitator who holds the space and guides them through this process. And by and large, our fellows always really enjoy this aspect of reflective practice. For many, it is new, but for many, it is an aspect that they wish they could have more time for. And we'll also talk about that a little bit more today. We also, our fellows also participate in collaborative learning groups, which are an opportunity for them to utilize and practice facilitative leadership skills in bringing together and guiding a discussion with fellows from different disciplines on the content that they're learning. And they also participate in a culminating project on a group of their choosing. So they create teams. And then even if they're at different organizations, which is often the case, they think about a step of some sort that they could take at their organizations, an intervention, something that could be improved. And it doesn't need to be on a large scale. It can be one small step to help enhance an aspect of their organizations. They create some sort of intervention or process. They implement it at their respective organizations, and then they present on how that went at the end of the year with the rest of the fellowship. So they also have a chance to learn from each other and be inspired by the work of their colleagues. And lastly, our fellows participate in an online learning community, which is an online forum, and they're able to share what we call our monthly written reflections. So every month they're asked to reflect on the content that we've covered, as well as share resources with each other, stay connected after the fellowship ends, access all of our fellowship resources that we upload month to month. And so it's a very active, lively space that our fellows are able to engage with in order to stay connected, because we don't see each other in between those live sessions every month. So this is a way that they're able to stay in touch with one another and engage with the content of the fellowship. So the first overall theme that I want to share with you all that is truly crucial to the development of early childhood professionals is collaborative learning. As many of you may be aware, I'm not sure everyone's roles in here, but early childhood work can encompass so many different disciplines and is very multidisciplinary in nature. And in our program, fellows are viewed as experts in their roles, and they each come with a wealth of knowledge about the communities that they support and the communities that they partner with, the practices and approaches that best support them, And we hope to utilize the fellowship as a way to amplify their expertise. And fellows from diverse professional and personal backgrounds participate in the program, and they bring a wide range of perspectives and life experiences that really enhances the depth and breadth of the human experience and allows fellows to learn from each other and to be exposed to different ways of thinking and different ways of helping support the early childhood field. And fellows are able to teach each other about their respective disciplines and how they approach working with young children. And this is also a really vital aspect that our fellows remark upon once they wrap up the fellowship, their ability to be able to learn from each other and to have this network of being able to be exposed to so much knowledge and different perspectives. We also see learning as an iterative process, and I think I mentioned this a little bit, but every month our fellows are asked to reflect on the content that they're being exposed to in the fellowship. For some concepts aren't necessarily new every time, but how are they applying this to their work, and what are they taking away each month, and how can we learn from the application of other fellows grappling with this information month to month. And we tried to weave the concepts and the themes of each month's content throughout the fellowship so that there is continuity throughout. And lastly, part of the collaborative learning is done through reflective practice, which is a really foundational process in early childhood and allows our professionals to be thinking about their own experiences and the work that they're doing and slow down for a second and be able to co-create a space where they come and share what's on their minds and help each other reflect and problem solve and share space together. This is also a time for them to be able to identify and wrestle with and re-examine potential biases and assumptions and misconceptions about others and about themselves, and explore their professional goals and aspirations, and the balance between their professional and personal lives. Here's a quote from one of our fellows. Learning how to work effectively with so many other professionals from different backgrounds, ethnicities, perspectives was the greatest gift I received from this fellowship. So in thinking about collaborative learning as a crucial piece of supporting early childhood professionals, here are a few takeaways that we like to encourage. One, providing opportunities for professionals to share their experiences with and learn from one another. This might seem basic and maybe just downright obvious, but providing different ways for people to share their expertise and wisdom can be so valuable in helping everybody feel important and that their voices matter and that their experiences matter. Regardless of where they're situated, which discipline they're in, everyone has something to contribute. And when folks can come together and learn from each other and grapple with different concepts together, this is a chance to help folks learn and grow. And it also allows for ways to amplify the voices of folks who may be a little more quiet or a little bit more in the background or less comfortable jumping in to certain conversations. And so, for example, in our program, we utilize our monthly written reflections that are hosted on the learning community. We try to bring those in and highlight different voices and different comments fellows have made to amplify and to share and highlight their posts. And it's a way to draw out different folks and be able to celebrate not just those folks who are more readily comfortable raising their hands and coming off mute and sharing, but also the folks that maybe are in the background but are still doing all of this work and maybe a little bit more quietly, and still helps them be able to build confidence and value that and have their perspective valued. Another key aspect of collaborative learning is building an intentional, consistent time for reflection. Reflective practice is a really important part of the early childhood field. And oftentimes, the feedback that we receive is just how difficult it can be to come by time to reflect that is prioritized by one's organization. And building in this intentional, consistent time for reflection can send the message that we value your time to think and to grow from what you're experiencing day to day. And it allows folks to think about what they're experiencing and slow down and be able to share with each other what is coming up and how to problem solve together. And lastly, another suggestion or strategy is modeling effective communication and perspective taking. Oftentimes, folks that are working with young children and families are asked to help be effective communicators and to help families take the perspective of their child and vice versa. And when this is modeled by leadership, by supervisors and directors, it can help early childhood professionals use that same those same skills and apply them to their work directly with young children. I'm going to pause here for just a second and see if there are any questions so far, any thoughts. All right, I'm not seeing anything in the chat, so I'm going to keep going. But again, feel free to drop those questions in the chat or comments. Would love to see them. The second theme that is very, very integral to our program is community-informed and culturally responsive practices. And in our program, this is not a static competency to be met. It's a lifelong, ongoing process and something we establish early on in the fellowship, the importance of thinking about these aspects, and they're integrated throughout the fellowship. We don't see this as being a single presentation that targets culturally responsive practices. The being culturally responsive is a perspective that we hope fellows can, if they're not already coming in with this mindset, to really think about applying to their work. And it's weaved in throughout all of our presentations. So our presenters are asked to infuse their presentations with cultural considerations and community considerations. And our topics are chosen to ensure relevance to underserved and under-resourced communities. And our presenters represent a wide range of disciplines, years of experience, educational backgrounds, work in academic and community settings. So we also highlight local and national experts. And we plan and coordinate with presenters to create an experience that is meaningful and relevant for the fellows. And the fellows are also given multiple opportunities to explore and share their own cultural backgrounds and identities, and the relevance to their work through our different experiential activities that we have. We have an activity at the start of every Friday where they're able to explore different aspects of their cultural identities through their reflective practice groups, their culminating projects, and so forth. So this is it's an invitation and also to some extent an expectation that it is something we grapple with directly and we think about very critically, and it's infused throughout. So here's a quote by one of our fellows. My biggest takeaways were the training, research on systemic racism, implicit biases, and how to overcome these barriers and address them with other professionals while advocating for the children and families we serve. And one thing I should also note is that along with being culturally responsive and community informed, this is something that also, as the program itself, we're constantly thinking about. We live in a changing world. Our program started before COVID, but we've had to make changes and considerations as different things impact the families and the families that our fellows serve and our fellows directly. And so this is something that we're also continuously thinking about. How do we make our program more culturally responsive and responsive to the needs of our fellows and the context in which we're living in? So a couple of strategies that you may already be doing, and if you are, I'd love to hear it in the chat, is supporting professionals in exploring, understanding, and honoring the practices of the communities they serve. So helping early childhood professionals slow down, notice the strengths of the families and the communities that they work with, noticing some of the challenges that may be unique to those specific communities, and thinking about how to honor the practices that are important to these communities. And a lot of that does require time to reflect. So, to our prior point about the importance of time for reflection, being able to truly explore and think about and cultivate cultural humility and the ability um, to be thoughtful and open, and create environments of openness and acceptance, as well as collaboration. We also suggest providing time and space for professionals to reflect on their own cultural identities and how these identities intersect with their work. This is again, I think, as I said when I first started out on the last slide, but this is an ongoing, lifelong process, and helping early childhood professionals understand and give them time to reflect and process on their own cultural identities and how their identities intersect with the populations that they serve, as well as how their identities intersect with their colleagues and the organizations that they're a part of, becomes a really important piece of being able to center community-informed and culturally responsive practices. We are all cultural beings, and we all come with many intersecting identities, and being able to identify and center that is important. And it does affect the direct service of early childhood professionals who often work with very diverse families. Our next theme is relational health. And we have a very, very strong focus on building relationships with and among participants of our entire fellowship, from the moment they're accepted all the way through the end. We try to provide many opportunities for our fellows to interact with each other, to get to know each other, to learn more about and deepen their connections with each other. And the relational health that is often focused on in early childhood are the supportive relationships that children have with caring adults. However, adults also require their own supportive relationships, particularly to do the work of an early childhood professional, whichever discipline they may be in. And this is a parallel process, right? To the extent that these relationships, these caring, kind, compassionate relationships are modeled within colleagues, between supervisors and supervisees, they can be also then the parallel process continues between those professionals and the families they serve. And then those families can also notice that and think about how those templates of relationships can be fostered within their own family units. So it really is a parallel process, and it can really start at the top, focusing on those relationships. And there is a practical aspect to this part of relationship building as well, right? There's being connected to other professionals can increase access to services. Services can be better coordinated when folks are working in sync together, and can build these networks of other providers that they trust and that they want to learn from and that they want to stay in touch and connected with. And our program is intentionally structured to promote connection and well-being. So during our live sessions, we provide multiple opportunities for fellows to talk to each other about different subjects. So we have different activities with different guiding questions, and they go into breakout rooms. They get a chance to get to know each other. We also have collaborative learning groups. So this is a chance for each of them to practice in what is hopefully a more comfortable space to practice facilitative leadership skills with one another. They also get to know each other through their culminating projects and through their reflective practice groups. So they have lots of opportunities to get to know each other and to cultivate these relationships. We also we build in professional well-being sessions where they're able to, the focus is individual well-being, but it is relational health because they do it together and we reflect on it together. And to give you an example, we have one presenter who does a professional well-being session for us on music. And they come and because we're virtual, folks are asked to grab a couple of items that they can drum with. It can be, you know, a can with rice in it or you know, a Tupperware or something. And although fellows are engaging in the activity from their own spots, they're also in a room with a number of other folks virtually and engaging in a very, very lively activity that this presenter does such a lovely job, Ping Ho, of getting everyone's perspectives and rhythms, and then they actually learn how rhythm and music is important in early childhood. So it kind of is a multi-pronged approach to professional well-being and thinking about relational health. The learning community is also another way that we foster connection, and because it provides a space for them to connect before, during, and in between sessions. And they're able to access that at any point. They're able to post different things. So we have fellows who have been, you know, like, I live in this part of a town, or I live here. Does anybody else live nearby and would like to get together? And our fellows have gotten together in the past. So some of these relationships carry outside of the fellowship. And they, although there are challenges to cultivating meaningful relationships in a remote format, there's a lot of ways that our fellows do connect. They've even done virtual coffee meetups and things of that nature. So it even goes beyond the fellowship. Here's a quote from one of our fellows about relational health. I think that the best part of this fellowship was being able to connect with other 0 to 5 practitioners. This work is very demanding and can be very isolating. It was great to see how many share my passion for the field. Interestingly, I think one resounding response we get at the end of the year after year, is how the fellowship for some fellows cultivates a sense of hope that there are other people who care about this field in the way that they do. And sometimes over time, we might feel a little jaded or burned out, but being able to see that there is work that's being done and people that feel passionate, and being in a room with a number of other professionals who feel as passionately about the work really makes them feel connected and hopeful for the future. I'll pause there actually before I move on to our next theme. Curious if anybody has any questions or thoughts. I'm not seeing anything in the chat. I'll go ahead and move us along in a second. So a few strategies here in order to support relational health. One is investing in your organization or team's connections with one another. And this doesn't, you know, we're not talking about a team retreat to Costa Rica, although that would be very nice. We're thinking about micro opportunities to connect with one another, building in meaningful moments of connection that can enhance overall team well-being and create a sense of belonging and care. This these feelings that can get fostered in these connections also get transferred to their work, right? When one feels supportive at work and feels like they're on a team and then they work closely together with others, they're more likely to feel more meaning and purpose in the work that they carry out. And this can look like a team huddle at the start of every day for folks that are maybe not all working in the same office. It can look like a Zoom huddle or some sort of way to increase connection, or maybe on Microsoft Teams chat, or some way that folks can check in throughout the week, take a temperature check, see how everyone's doing. And this also doesn't mean that professional boundaries need to be breached in any way or that you need to delve into the deep personal lives of your colleagues. It can simply mean asking how they're doing, how they're managing their workload, and modeling empathy and compassion for their work and whatever they bring up. And sometimes folks do want to share about their personal lives, and that's, of course, okay, and can be meaningful to share with each other. But just being open to modeling that empathy and compassion and care can do a lot for these relationships. And these are the same types of qualities that we want early childhood professionals to bring into their work, because we want those parents working and raising young children to be cultivating empathy and compassion with their children. So as you can see, that parallel process there. We also want to think about providing formal and informal opportunities for connection amongst your organization or team. We try to do this on multiple different levels, right? I think about it in terms of our direct team that hosts the fellowship. We try to be very intentional about our onboarding process, getting to know our new team members when we do have new team members, getting to celebrate with each other when things do happen. We do keep for example, our team keeps a small, we have a birthday calendar. And so when we know someone's birthday is coming up that week, we'll all do a surprise Zoom background and wish them a happy birthday and get to talk a little bit about what they're doing for their birthday. So these moments of connection don't need to be super extensive again, but building those opportunities, whether it's grabbing lunch together or having maybe some reflective practice time to come together and think about what's happening for your team or your organization. And lastly here, and again, this may seem obvious, but listening actively and with intention. This is even just 10 minutes of doing this for a colleague, a supervisee, somebody who is under your leadership can be crucial to making them feel like they can slow down, that they can get their needs met, and then they can fill their cup to go do that for the families that they serve or for the communities that they serve. Sometimes it's not direct service, but being able to model that active listening and intentional listening pays off in many ways, especially through that parallel process where they can also, when somebody feels seen in their own connections with other colleagues and supervisors, directors, they can go ahead and transfer that to their work as well. And we also think about relational health a little bit more broadly too, in the way that we try to connect, like for example, in our program with our fellows from the very beginning. So we try to have different ways to welcome all of the fellows into the fellowship. They each receive an individualized email at the start of the year, highlighting what we loved about their application. We give them opportunities to meet with each other and we open up the room early, so those folks that want to come and chat while they drink their coffee and get situated is also an opportunity for them to connect and expand those relationships. And we also bring a lot of play into what we do. So getting a chance to be playful, to be creative, to have fun, and to do that together also brings a sense of community and a sense of wellness to the space and how they relate to one another. The last theme that I'm going to cover today, I could think of so many themes, but these are the 4 that we narrowed it down to for the sake of time today, is facilitative leadership. And our fellows are in a variety of professional and paraprofessional roles, some of which are what would be traditionally viewed as leadership positions, whereas others might not necessarily be seen as traditional leadership roles. But our fellowship provides opportunities for them to explore and think more explicitly and expansively about what it means to be a leader, and to support all the fellows in recognizing and building up their facilitative leadership qualities. So facilitative leadership, the way that we view it is the ability and skill to help facilitate discussions, to help bring folks in conversation together, and to be able to highlight different voices and draw out different perspectives and be able to guide a conversation. But this can be done in so many different ways. And then fellows, regardless of what role they're in, can go off and do that in their own organizations and spaces. And the goal is for fellows to feel more confident and skilled in advocating for their families, the communities that they work with, and for themselves in terms of their own professional growth. So the more comfortable that they get being able to build these skills, the more likely they're able to bring those back to their organizations. And they're given multiple opportunities to build on these facilitative leadership skills through their culminating projects, through their collaborative learning groups. So they're given opportunities to practice. And we also do some didactics around facilitative leadership that allow them to get a sense for how do we expand our definition of leadership, and how can the things that I do day to day be actually reframed as leadership qualities. Here is a quote for one of our fellows. "In this process, I furthered my leadership skills, practiced using my voice, speaking up about things that I think are important. I'm typically a shy, quiet person, so this fellowship allowed me the opportunity to try on this new hat of speaking up more." I think that quote really highlights that people can be leaders in different ways, and really expanding this definition of leadership is one of the strategies that we want to suggest. And sometimes really impactful leaders are not the people who are in what we would think as conventional leadership roles. Some folks lead quietly, sometimes through relationship building, helping others be successful in their roles. And they may be less comfortable with the spotlight, but it's important to acknowledge their contributions, even if it's behind the scenes. And when folks feel seen, even if they are doing more of that behind the scenes legwork, it can really bring a team together and help folks see their different strengths and how to play to each other's strengths as well. And we try to model this in the fellowship. We try to celebrate the participants whose leadership skills are very evident, but we also look for the less obvious leadership skills and try to highlight their contributions. So drawing out those contributions, maybe from those folks that are a little bit more in the background, but everybody has something important to contribute, and everyone can foster leadership skills in different ways. And so, like, for example, this is maybe a more minor example, but sometimes somebody posts something in the chat during a presentation. There's a lot of folks, we encourage folks to unmute and ask questions to encourage lively dialogue. But some folks are a little more nervous to come off mute, and so they'll put a comment in the chat and it may get overlooked. So we try to make sure we go back in and we answer folks' questions, or we read someone's comment in the chat, because there are different ways that people are engaging with the material. And their comments are important too, even if they feel a little more shy to share. Lastly, another strategy is scaffolding leadership development opportunities. This can it's best when this is done in a stepwise function, when folks can be given responsibility and be able to build agency and build confidence with smaller steps until they're able to, get comfortable and have that experience and practice to apply it to maybe a more challenging leadership opportunity. So, for example, we see that as our collaborative learning groups are an opportunity for our fellows to come together and lead a discussion with a number of other fellows, and they're responsible for guiding this discussion. It's about 40 minutes. and drawing out different people's responses and highlighting and connecting ideas. So they're that point person, they're the facilitator. Then they go on to do their culminating projects. And then they have the opportunity to facilitate those discussions with the entire fellowship when we talk about their projects, and they're fielding questions from different fellows. So they go from facilitating maybe for 5 people to then facilitating in front of 40 people. And this is a nice way for them to kind of get some practice and then ramp up the opportunity. So lastly, one thing I did want to talk about is continuous quality improvement and evaluation. And I think that this is very important to our group, and is also important, and I imagine many folks in this room do this as well, but just as a reminder how important it is to continuously reflect on any changes in community needs, in fellows, professional needs, of integrating fellows' feedback and interests throughout the year, and also the information we receive at the end of the year to inform the following cohort. So we try to take multiple sources of information, both from some of the live comments we get session to session. We actually try to take notes throughout our sessions so that we can come back as a team and discuss some of the needs. We also get questions through email. We get questions on the learning community or comments. And we're also staying up to date with what's happening for example, in the LA County area, in the state of California, in our country, things that are impacting our community. And this is what helps us to constantly be thinking about how to make sure that the fellowship is responsive to the needs of our fellows and as the field evolves over time. And so just as a reminder of how important this is, and because we serve such a diverse group, this can sometimes be a challenge to try to meet the needs of everyone, but there is a lot of great ways to leverage the strengths of multidisciplinary providers. And when we get creative, we're able to leverage all these strengths and bring together a fellowship every year that I think hopefully gets better and better every year, but I think ends up being a very responsive environment to our fellows. We also do pre and post self-assessments. So at the start of the year, they're able to provide their own self-assessment of where they stand in terms of their reflective practice skills, their knowledge about different content areas we're going to cover in the fellowship. And then at the end of the year, we compare that with their post-assessment survey. And by and large, we do see that all of them feel more comfortable in all of the areas by the end of the year. And they take away a lot of knowledge that they've gotten a chance to apply and reflect on. So with that, I'll pause and see if there's any questions. I'll share as I wrap up before we go more to official question time, if there are any questions. We are opening our next recruitment cycle for the fellowship for our 2025-2026 fellowship year. And we have a couple of information sessions coming up. One is on Tuesday, March 11th from 12 to 1 p.m. And you can register at this link right here. And then there's a second session on Wednesday, April 9th from 9 to 10 a.m., also on Zoom. And you can learn more, ask your questions. But if not, if you're unable to attend and you're still interested in learning more about the fellowship, you can go to our website. It is in the process of being updated in the next couple of days. So it might look a little different if you go on there right now and then you go on next week. So just a heads up, you're still in the same page. It just looks different. And our applications are opening this upcoming week on Monday, and our cycle will be open until April 22nd. So we try to allow enough time for folks to consider whether they'd like to apply, and we accept applications from not just LA County, but throughout California and throughout the country. So if this is of interest, just wanted to put this out here since this is a very timely time given that we're opening the next fellowship recruitment cycle. So just wanted to have a few minutes. I thought I had until noon for this presentation, so I wanted to allow a few minutes for questions if anybody does have a question or a thought or a comment or any ideas. Would love to hear those in the spirit of feedback and continuous quality improvement. So if there are any, we welcome those. And if you have any questions about our program or anything that was shared today, you can feel free to email us at the email listed here, ecfinfo@wellbeing4, the number 4, la.org. Oh, and I see, Barbara, did you have a question?
Yeah, I did. Thank you for this presentation. My question is actually about funding. I'm an early childhood person. I'm a big believer in collaborative care. I cross a lot of different systems of care. And when I really think about I think about sustainability for a model of care that you're presenting, and I wonder so there's workforce development training on the one hand, and then there's sustaining that kind of collaborative care model on the other hand in terms of funding. And I'm wondering if you have anything to say about that.
Yeah, it's very complex and it is, I think it is, it's a challenge of the early childhood field, given that I think oftentimes the funding changes and so we are luckily generously funded in part by the Department of Mental Health of LA County, and that partnership has allowed us to sustain this program. But we've also needed to seek other forms of funding to complement that so we can keep going. And it is a challenge, certainly.
Do you mean the Department of Mental Health, meaning for workforce development or for actual services, meaning
For workforce development.
for workforce development? I see. So it's training money
Yes,
to help support.
exactly.
Okay.
And we're hopeful that in our application materials, we tried to highlight too, if supervisors can understand the impact, organizations that do have remaining funds can put that forward to to supporting their fellows to participate. But that is often a barrier that I think our fellows or applicants have faced is it is hard to get the time off from their organizations.
Well, that's what I was going to ask. So your fellows are people already working in
Yes,
various systems of care that come together, and then they need the support of their agency in terms of time off
correct.
to kind of.
Or some agencies do expect them, if you'd like to participate, you need to understand that you'll have to apply your own PTO or things of that nature. It depends on the expectations between the supervisor and the fellow, but it is very clear they actually have to submit a supervisor recommendation in order to participate. So that
And did you say what the time commitment was for fellows? Did I
yeah,
miss?
so it's 8 hours on Fridays and eight essential like average, roughly 8 hours on a Friday and 8 hours on a Saturday, once per month from September to June.
Okay, great.
So it's about 16 hours, but 8 of those are during the work week.
Great. Yeah, thank you.
Yeah, thank you.